Good morning and thank you for joining today's webinar. Let me just turn off the music and we will get today's slides up. Fantastic. Excellent. Right. We are here today with TrilbyTV on a presentation around building whole school communication with TrilbyTV. Neil Emery, are you there?
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Very good. Thank you very much for joining us today. Just a couple of bits on Webinar Jam just for the delegates that have joined us. On the right-hand side, you'll see there's a chat feature. Please feel free to drop questions into there, and I'll mark them as questions as they come in. I'm sure Neil will look at those at the end of the presentation or pick them up as we go through. Just to remind everyone as well that we are 10 seconds ahead of you, and if we do have any technical problems, what we can do is regenerate a new room. So touch wood, there won't be any, and we'll be all good to go. And I will pass over to Neil. Neil, it's all yours.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm just noticed I was at the end of my slideshow, so just move that to the start. So thanks, everybody. Welcome to this Building Whole School Communication with TrilbyTV in partnership with Academia. Thank you, Academia, for giving us this opportunity to do so. I've got some really exciting guests with me this morning. I'm hoping they're all going to turn on their cameras and their microphones so we can all see them now. Guys, if you can do that, that would really useful for me. I can see them appearing. All but potentially Dan. Dan looks like he might be having some technical issues at the moment, so I might have to move past Dan just for a minute, and hopefully he's able to join the call without some technical difficulties. So I will introduce Dan. So I'm really proud to have Dan Oates from St Bartholomew's Primary Academy down in Wootton Bassett, where Dan is the head teacher and he's the strategic digital lead for DSAT, which is the Salisbury Academy Trust down there. So if Dan joins us, that would be great. He's representing the primary angle of this. Next, I've got Gavin Spark, who's the strategic lead for digital learning of Cleveland Learning Trust. I've also got John Jones. He's the Director of Innovation of the RGS Worcester family of schools. And then I've got Chris Wood, who's the digital lead at Portsmouth College. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining. Just a little bit before I move on to my presentation, starting with Gavin. Gavin, tell us a little bit about your role at Cleveland and how you came to sort of manage your your whole school communication and digital signage at Cleveland School.
So my role is all to do with the strategic lead of digital learning, not just only at Cleveland School, but also Cleveland Learning Trust, where we also focus quite a lot on the training and the professional development of teachers and also the student. And where I came about having sort of ownership or sort of the management of the digital signage is where our current system probably wasn't doing what it needed to do. And me being sort of the most digital person around, with a sort of a creative eye and a creative sort of ability to get content on there, that's when it landed on sort of on my desk to sort of push it forward.
Nice. And what about you, John? How did you come about managing some of this whole school communication and digital signage?
Well, excuse me. When I first started working here, I noticed lots of screens, and they were managed in a slightly different way to using TrilbyTV. And as you know, Neil, in my previous job down in Kent, we got TrilbyTV up and running, and it changed the way we dealt with digital signage and changed the way that I used it personally. So although I'm ultimately responsible for the signage here, we believe in the democratization of it as well. So we train teachers and train staff who need to use the signage and hand over that responsibility or distribute that responsibility to them as well. But I work across 4 schools now. So like Gavin, it's not just one institution. There's 4 schools, lots of screens, and more screens are popping up all the time because people have seen how useful they are. So my job's to make sure that the content is obviously of a suitable standard and is updated and is useful.
Yeah, nice. And it's that effective use of the science communication that's driving people to want more screens because they see the impact it can have, right?
Correct.
Yeah, nice. And Chris, what about you down at Portsmouth College?
Yeah, so I'm the digital lead at Portsmouth College. So we're a sixth form college on the south coast, one-to-one iPads, an Apple distinguished school. But I also teach. So I teach 80% of my time. So I teach music technology and media studies. And for us, it was about really giving students a voice and taking some of the amazing work that we do day in, day out on our iPads and showcasing that throughout the school. And we really had that kind of eureka moment, similar to John was speaking about, where there was loads of screens that were just not being used, that were turned off, really, really wasted resource. And so that's how I kind of came about that role. And yeah, I manage all the screens, but within that, we have students that upload work. We have members of staff that look after specific screens from there. So it's really expanded and kind of changed our culture, so to speak, of digital signage.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear because historically, I think signage has been managed by the IT department. And that for this webinar, no disrespect to IT, who we love and who we deal with a lot, but I didn't want necessarily IT on the call, on the webinar, because historically they've been the ones to manage it. When actually the success of digital signage can very much come from lots of different members of staff across a school or a college. And actually IT are often busy doing IT things. You know, we found that they were having to micromanage screens or micromanage people and overcomplicate, you know, platforms to run it. So giving ownership to other staff makes perfect sense. So it's just interesting to hear how you guys found yourself being part of this signage and whole school communication. And that really leads me on to sort of our story. You know, what's the story behind TrilbyTV? Because there's a story behind everything usually, right? And, you know, I met some of you guys, hopefully the presentation is working as it should do, from my Apple days. So as a company, Trilby were heavily involved in working with Apple. That was half of making sure that the IT resellers who were selling Apple technologies understood the impact it could have in teaching and learning. But also making sure that on an educational point of view, again, back in the days, usually when there was a set of iMacs in an art room, that again, we went in and showed them all the stuff that was on there and not just Photoshop. So making sure, you know, schools realized that what they were purchasing had fantastic impact. When this came along, it changed everything. So iPad came out, this consumer device that wasn't really meant for education, but education went mad for it overnight. And we were some of the first iPad trainers that went out and delivered all of this iPad training, whether it was directly for a school or college, or whether, again, a reseller had sold some iPads and sold some training into, again, a school or college. So we were sat in lots and lots of receptions waiting for those such as yourselves to come and collect us for a training session. And we would look at that blank signage screen on the right-hand side. Probably in about 90% of the schools we went into, we saw this blank signage screen, this blank TV. And that was a bit crazy for us because we were there to do very creative processes on the iPad, movies, presentations, slideshows, all of this really rich content that Apple are well known for on their devices, not just on iPad, but previously on all their Macs and that as well. But there was no nice way for us to share that so that we could evidence what we'd done that day. And for us, that was really important. From a student perspective, it was really important. You know, often we show something once in an assembly and then it's never seen again. So we were thinking, how can we make sure this stuff that is being created on the iPads, lots of stuff, is shared and showcased? So we thought that that screen and reception and other screens that were off or lacking impact would have been the perfect mechanism for that. Some of the reasons that it kind of, for us, it kind of stopped working or it wasn't being used for sharing and showcasing. Often there was a USB stick. Oh, here, Dan's here at last. Hey, Dan. Love it. Well done.
Sorry.
Oh, it's good to see you. Thank you.
Do apologise.
That's all right. I'm just going over what we saw in schools when we saw these blank screens and the reasons why. So sometimes there was a USB stick in the back of a TV. There was a bit of a pain to pull out and then put into your computer and update. People had given up with that process. or there was a laptop plugged in running a PowerPoint for the last 3 years that no one had updated. And to be honest, that laptop would have been better utilized in the classroom. Or there was some overcomplicated solution that was meant for, you know, all verticals, so not just education. So it might have been also meant for retail and restaurant and health. And that doesn't work for education. They need something very, very specific. So people had given up, screens had turned off, and, you know, they were easy to walk past and forget about at the end of the day. So for us, it was really about making sure that going forward, that, you know, that actually signage has some impact. Signage has a plan around it, that actually, you know, we see signage as being something that can really help drive whole school communication. And that's a big focus for us. So it's not just about, you know, putting screens on walls. It's actually working out how we can increase our digital signage estate, how we can build communication, how we can build stronger communities. And right now we've got a great opportunity to do that. You know, there's historical digital signage in schools. You know, there's 700,000 interactive classroom screens out there that can also be used for communication. So there's a huge blank canvas for communication out there. But again, I think it's about at last having some sort of plan around this to make sure, again, that it's not just a screen on the wall, but doing something, because actually that's not good enough for us. So that's why, you know, we gave up everything we were doing with Apple and Google in the training space to really focus on TrilbyTV, to make sure it's the #1 digital signage platform for education, but also, again, to make sure schools are really thinking about how these screens and walls can actually drive communication. So that's a bit from me. That's me off my pedestal. I mean, I just wanted to ask you guys what you think about why you think signage in education hasn't had the impact, you know, that it should have had. Why were these screens going into schools? What were they supposed to be doing? But why did they actually turn off? You know, what were some of the reasons for that? So I'll start with you, Dan. What do you think? What are some of the reasons that signage might have failed in the school space?
Yeah, I mean, the example you were giving there, Neil, resonated with me in my previous school, which was we invest in 2 screens, but the platforms that we had running it were so archaic that nobody ever updated it. So it was always old content that was on there, which meant nobody noticed it anymore. So the screens got switched off and we didn't use them anymore. And also maybe from a lot of schools, probably schools see it as kind of being as something they can't achieve, you know, a really cost-effective and effective digital signage platform for a lot of schools that think, well, I wouldn't know where to go. It's stuff you associate with big corporate companies, isn't it? Not necessarily primary schools or secondary schools. But actually now there is a platform that is cost-effective and is manageable. And that is why we're here today, people. So yeah, those were the 2 things from my perspective now.
Cool. And what about Gavin? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with what you mentioned, Neil, before, and also what Dan said. Really, I think it's now possible to sort of do the things that, like Dan said, that were in the big company workspaces, or, you know, in a commercial sort of setting where you'd see a big screen with, you know, really rich content on that screen. I think it is now achievable, and also it's manageable as well. Whereas previously mentioned, it was put, you know, a long string of people that were involved in trying to get something on the screen that by the time then it gets on the screen, it's sort of out of date, or it's not really appropriate anymore. So the ease of use is definitely the thing that makes it manageable.
Cool. And John, your thoughts on this one? Can John hear me?
Yeah, just turning my mic on before I started speaking.
Sorry.
Not at all. I think basically, Neil, the TrilbyTV correlated with the digital revolution in schools, with the rise of social media, the rise of use of digital devices, the output of work from children, the output of content from teachers. All these things have happened in the last 5 to 10 years. So the screens that are up have been around longer than that. So therefore, they sort of correlated initially with things like PowerPoint and memory sticks, and a lack of ability for children to produce outstanding work. So in its first guise, when we first adopted it, it purely was a content system that was really simple for teachers to use to get that amazing work from kids up on the screen to celebrate it. And all the other things that we can do there now as well simply didn't exist. So the schools have been crying out, I think, the screens have been crying out, teachers have been crying out for a simple to use system that means all these things can be easily put up and shared and celebrated. And, you know, Trilby TV does all those things, and that's why we use it, and that's why we're all talking about it today.
Yeah, I like that, though. It's a time correlation, isn't it? Because, like you said, the screens went up when there weren't iPads, and making content, even we know from those early iPads, making content and getting it off was initially quite difficult until the mechanisms came along. And you're right, it's that rise of technology where people saw an opening to make something, to achieve something like this is why it happened in the end. So probably, maybe sometimes I do a disservice to other things that were out there, because actually it was the point of that technology revolution that stopped it from being a really seamless process. So cool, thank you for that. Chris, what's your thought?
I mean, I think just to really pick up on what John was saying, you kind of need to have that eureka moment. And we had that eureka moment of, oh my God, why aren't we using this? And this is such a missed resource. And now we're actively looking to find opportunities to use the signage. We're creating more innovative content, and like Trilby TV, it's so easy. It's so simple to use. There's no longer this hassle of, oh, I've got to unplug a stick, I've got to put the stuff on it, then I need to do that every time I want to do something with it. It's just so quick, so easy, and it's hassle-free signage, total hassle-free signage.
Yeah, you're all being very kind to our platform, but obviously we're here to talk about the general sort of whole school communication as well, and the idea around using signage to do that. And it's interesting, isn't it? You look at the real world, and it's full of it. You know, whether we notice it or not, it's in your train stations, it's in your high streets. The one in your high streets have usually got a profile camera built in, and they know how old you are, what sex you are. And if you stand there long enough, they will direct content based on making you do something. And that's a really interesting thing for schools to think about, because you are the eyes of that camera, you know, and you know who your viewers are. So it's about even thinking about how the real world works and bringing some of that into your schools to mirror some of that. So cool. Well, listen, there's always considerations for something like this, anything to do with technology, anything to do with a school or in a college. So I'm going to stop this presentation and I'm going to share my screen, because for everybody to join the webinar today, guys, just to check, guys, can you see the Padlet wall on the screen at the moment? Is that what you're seeing at the moment?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah. Okay. So what we've done is I want people to have a takeaway from today's webinar. So something you can use. So I've created a Padlet wall. If you don't know Padlet yet, then you need to have a look at Padlet. It's a great way to share within the classroom, but beyond the classroom as well. I've added boxes for all of the attendees today and some of their answers, and we've also added some examples and some resources just so that it gives people something to go back and reflect on, which I thought was going to be really useful for this. So, I mean, you know, everything, you know, does need a plan for me, for it to be successful. And I learned that from doing lots of those early iPad one-to-one projects where we ran a vision and plan course. And part of that was to come out with a 10-12 page document that we gave back to the school or the college to make sure that if they followed that plan, then the impact from their purchases, from what they were trying to achieve, would be far greater than without the plan. So for me, you know, everything does need a bit of a plan. So I'm also going to ask you guys one by one sort of some considerations that you think create a successful whole school communication project. So Dan, again, you did give me lots more answers than this, but I've cut it down to a couple per each of you. So Dan, I'll start with you at the primary end, because you are all very different in regards to how you might approach some of this stuff. But in regards to considerations for a successful project, Dan, the first one I really liked from you was the kind of manageability of this. And I guess again, you mean the simplicity of the platform for lots of your staff. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, bearing in mind you're looking at a bloke that didn't get into the webinar till 10 past 10, it needs to be nice and simple for me. And yeah, we had previous platforms that were just overly complicated. And what I like about Trilby is it's just so simple. You create something inspiring, you create something creative, something that you really want to shout from the rooftops, and at the press of a button, it's on the screens around the school. So yeah, it's got to be nice and simple. And equally, you know, staff, teachers, kids have got that much on the plate at the moment that it needs to be simple for them to use. They don't want anything else complicated in their lives. So for them to embrace it and start to use it, it needs to be really, really simple to use. And Trilby is just that.
Yeah.
Very simple.
But some training is always useful, right? As we know from historically working together.
Yeah. So, and what you find with any new initiative sometimes is you can, when you do that initial piece of training, you know, your early adopters will go off and run with it, but obviously it needs to be a continual flow of training. So what we tend to do is we will obviously revisit things like this, go over them more than once, and Trilby is a case in point. So we introduced Trilby, just very simply, just putting some photos onto the signage around the school, and then we came back and we showed how we can create content using, you know, iMovie and clips and so on. So yeah, just well thought out and regular training. Because again, yeah. I'm thinking of staff now, they've got that much on their plate, you need to come back to it, you know, time and time again.
Yeah. Yeah, the simplicity for me is very, very key. You know, again, from delivering iPad training all those years ago, that 80% of staff for me were slightly uncomfortable IT-wise with what they were being asked to do. So again, you've got to make it simple or else they won't use it. That's a big factor. Gavin, I really liked your kind of who will update, moderate and manage the screen. So it's about ownership, isn't it? About getting some key stakeholders involved to, you know, to take on these roles.
Yeah, definitely. Just like anything digital from experience, I think you definitely need to get those stakeholders with an investment early on, and also witnessing the advantage or the benefit that they can have with that initial investment. So for instance, at Clevedon, our house championship is very strong, and an immediate person to get invested or to get involved was the person responsible for promoting the house championships. So they were initially complaining that, you know, let's say students weren't reading their emails, they weren't seeing the events, but immediately by getting them managing a screen and managing the content, then it immediately gets two of us on board, and then we developed from there. So you know, you also may need to consider, you know, who is the person that is turning off the screens at night time. So the caretakers that wandering around school, you know, trying to save a few pence by turning them off overnight. You know, who is then going to switch it back on in the morning? So all these sort of non-technical really things that you need to consider, but you know, when you walk past the screen in the morning and it's off, there needs to be a question where, you know, why has that screen gone off and who is responsible for turning it back on?
Yeah, we'll pick this up a bit as well with Chris, I think, with his question as well at the end. But when you say quality controller screens, do you mean kind of sort of the ability for someone maybe to put something on a screen that doesn't represent what you're trying to achieve, doesn't represent your band?
I think that comment really applies to not just only staff members but also students as well. So they are sort of looking at the quality of their, let's say, an announcement that one teacher, let's say, wants to advertise their club at lunchtime or an event that's happening, and they try to cram in every single detail onto that one slide that they want to show for, let's say, 10 seconds. They really need to question what it is, you know, that they're trying to do. But also when the students then create content in the lesson to then show on the screens, they need to apply the same sort of success criteria in terms of, you know, we watch adverts on TV, they need to grab our attention just like the stuff that's going to go on the screens.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, and that leads nicely really on to John's feedback. You know, John, you said position of screens, purpose of screens, sort of guidance for users. I mean, it's massively important to think about where the screens are located, who the viewer is, how long the viewer is looking at those screens, and then content comes from there. But as Gavin said, it's got to be really quite, you know, engaging content, right?
Absolutely. before I go on to that, just to pop back to Gavin's point about the screens being switched on and off, and also to bring up the IT technicians that you spoke about earlier, how useful they are. Mine came up with a great solution to that, which is to buy smart plugs and control it all from a phone. It's worked really, really well, and it obviously saves a bit of money with sustainability, etc. as well. But in terms of the position of the screens, for example, we've got a lunch menu screen. It's purely for lunch menus. It's updated with a Google document, and it's got massive text on it. So we can put that up above a door on the way to the lunch hall, and it's managed remotely by the canteen staff. However, we've also got another screen that we're working on putting out at the moment, which is connected to some solar panels. And the reason we've got it, the reason we want to present that screen is so children can see the amount of energy the solar panels are producing. And the only way we can do that is by linking it to a website. And the text is tiny, so we can't use the same screen in the same place for both those things. We've really got to think carefully about where they go, and also the size of the screen itself. Do we get a 60-inch plasma, or do we get a 30-inch screen? And all these screens have obviously different purposes and uses. And certainly the position of the screens as well, in terms of children being able to read them, or in reception, whether they need to face the seats or they need to face the receptionist so she can check the content. So there's lots of things to take into consideration. And I go back to that word, democratization of it, because ultimately it should be up to the departments that want to utilize those screens to think about those things. And the more people that put their brains to it and their mind to it, the better the solution, really. So absolutely, the position of the screens, the purpose of the screens. And the last point I've put there is guidance for users, because the problem with democratization is that if there's so many people doing it, how does it get monitored? How do we know the quality of the content's good enough across, we've got probably 30, 40, 50 screens now. And so, again, we need to make sure the people that are in charge of those screens are properly trained in their use and fully understand the consequences of spelling mistakes and other such misdemeanors.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very true. And we'll come on to a bit of guidance after Chris. Chris, I'm going to just fire towards your hardware piece, because we built TrilbyTV as a platform, and lots of other platforms would do the same. They allow you to use any device to plug into your TV to then, run the content. But you guys use something as low cost as an Amazon Fire Stick, don't you?
Yeah, and just to pick up on John's point as well, we use the smart timer plugs, and that is such an effective way of just making sure the screens turn on and off at the right time. But for us, the Fire Sticks they're so quick and easy, and they're so cheap as well to buy. We can get a screen set up in seconds from it as well. And the beautiful thing about it is that we're now seeing new opportunities. So we have the screens running around the college. We have different areas. We have like a welfare room, a student centre room, a staff room with different content that we'll speak about later. But our marketing team saw on an open evening, they said, well, hang on a second, we can get our Twitter feed updating on this. So then we brought a Fire Stick, turned up next day delivery, and then that evening, their tweets that were coming out from the live event that we were at were appearing live on the screen as new students were coming through. Such an awesome, such an engaging way of just engaging new students to come into the college and really showcasing, we are pioneering this new technology. We are pushing the boundaries of this and moving away from that very boring kind of, I'm just going to stick a PowerPoint on a slide type thing.
Yeah, I guess there's a few thoughts there from me. Again, the screens on and off is a really important one, because you do not want remote controls in the way. I actually drove 3 hours to Kent once to a customer who told me TrilbyTV was broken, and when I got there, the batteries were dead in the remote control. Of course, I'm Neil from TrilbyTV. I will happily do that because we're close to our customers. But my thoughts are, when an AV company or an IT company are in putting those screens in, they should be setting up or talking to the school about the on and off, which comes with a screen all the time now anyway. So you can set the screen automatically when in a new TV to come on at 8 o'clock and turn off at 5 o'clock. That's already in the screens. But if you've got timers as well, you're using like John with an app, that sounds fantastic as well. So you need to take that out of the hands of someone, because again, remotes potentially will make screens go on and off. There is no doubt about that. And I guess also there's that in regards to the hardware, Fire Sticks, we made it for anything. So Fire Sticks will work nicely. It's Android, so it looks after itself, turns itself back on, etc., etc. But it is a consumer device. So there is some honesty there. Amazon could do something tomorrow. There is some honesty in Apple TV. Apple could do something tomorrow. So you have to make that decision between a consumer and a commercial, which will come down to cost. But if you want something more robust, then potentially you go down that commercial route. So loads, there is so much involved. And maybe people on the call are thinking, oh my God, do I want to put so much effort into what is a TV on the wall? Well, kind of yes, because that's the reason that they've turned off in the past, that you need to have a bit of a plan. So over here on the left, considerations from us, it is about a plan. And I always talk about where screens are, who the viewers are, how long they're going to be looking at the content, and then the content derives from that. We often work with our customers in regards to coming up with that plan, and I've uploaded, because they very kindly said we could share this. Charlene's Collegiate Academies Trust have a guidance PDF document, which I will open and give you a look at, which if it's useful, then happily download it and have a look and pick up some of the ideas that they have in here. They are 6 academy trusts running Trilby TV across those academies, and they use it per school, but they also, with Trilby TV, can sign into each academy to make sure standardized content is pushed to all of those schools. And they can also take content from one to another instantly with Trilby TV. So, this is for all staff to access. It's a nice document. It talks about what is Trilby TV, gives them some nice links there. We've done some training sessions, so they've recorded the training sessions and put them online so staff can come back and have a look at these, which is great. There's expectations from academy perspective. So, keep content up to date and keep it fresh. Make sure it's appropriate for the audience. Proofread and check it. As John says, make sure that it's proofread and checked, because that can really devalue the message. Allow trust-wide messages to be displayed on screens. Share ideas and best practice. There's some lovely stuff in this document. There's also expectations from a trust level, so for the central team, in regards to how it should all be managed and what support should be provided. I also have a regular catch-up with these guys to talk about any issues or any training needed or anything else that we can provide them with in regards to support. Then it comes down to the content, and I really like this. So there are risks about people viewing content in passing, content that's not relevant, but they've got some really nice solutions there. So as we've talked about already, make sure the content is easy to understand, and can be quicked up, that it's engaging. So I want to look at it, ask yourself who's likely to see that content, and make sure it's used alongside other communication channels. Absolutely. This is, for me, it's like the screen and reception is the next arm of your website, It should be linking with all the stuff you do to kind of complement what you're doing. And then we've got some really nice ideas about screens, so we've got required content for the reception screen, staff room screen, and communal areas. We've got optional content, some ideas that you could also be using. And then they talk about seasonal content. So they have this digital content calendar. So, we have days like World Book Day, we have days like Safer Internet Day, Black History Month. So there's going to be stuff that you want on your screens as part of the learning, as part of a year of, inspiring students. Okay, so it's a really nice plan. And it's not huge, it's 8 or 9 slides, but it has everything that you would want to help build a successful whole communication project. So that's up on the Padlet. You're more than welcome to have a look at that one. I've also put the link in for our 5 considerations for digital signage PDF as well. So we, as a company, have some considerations, some ideas, some tips that will be useful if you're on a digital signage journey. So be serious about this and have a plan in place, get some people to sign up to it and revisit it once or twice a year to make sure it's on the right, on the right road, on the right path. So we talked about screens and the importance of content on these screens. So we're going to start with the reception screen, and we'll grab some ideas and some examples of what you guys are doing on your reception screen. I'm already looking at time as it's flying by, so we might have to do only a couple of these, but that's fine because the Padlet wall's here for everybody anyway. So Dan, that screen and reception, that's got to be impactful, right? Because that's got visitors and parents and people that potentially are important to you. So So how do you look at that reception screen in regards to content that you want, put onto it?
Yeah, I guess backing up what you said there is that reception screen is an arm of your website, isn't it? And the community where my school is, St Bart's, there are 3 other primary schools, and one academy, one secondary school. The secondary school is outstanding, and up until 18 months ago, my school was the only requires improvement school in that community. So there's a lot of competition, a lot of why go to St Bart's. So that reception screen was all about beaming out why you should choose our school, and we put everything on there that we possibly could just to show the creative and vibrant work that we're doing. We obviously rebranded the vision and values when I first started, so it's important that we communicated that with everybody, the kids to do that. So the children create lots of videos that showcase our vision, our values, where we're going as a school, and that beams non-stop in the reception screen. So it's the selling point, it's the branding of your school. The minute somebody walks in, they should see something that makes them stop and go, wow, I want my kids to come here. I want to work in this school. And that reception screen is just a great way of doing that, with the right platform, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a quick look. This is one of your videos that plays in your reception screen, your values.
Mm-hmm. It's good, isn't it? There we go.
So something really simple, but it just reinforces, doesn't it? Or your values from the school. Why everybody buys into such a strong community at St Bart's, which I love.
Yeah. Can I also just on that news? In addition to that, is also the staff walk past that screen as well. So in the early days, when you're trying to show everybody where we're going as a school and what the new aspirations are for our school, they walk past that every day. And they need to see what other classes are doing and where the school's going. So again, it was almost, it's showing the ambition and drive of the school because everyone walked past that in the morning.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I'll move on to Gavin. Gavin, I'll just do the alumni and careers. I'll show it first, and then I think this is genius, and then I'll let you have a little discussion about it, if that's okay, and why you did it. So I'll play this. This is slides that focus on previous students that I love. So. I mean, it doesn't feel like rocket science, does it? But I absolutely love that idea. So who came up with that, and kind of why?
So that was all part of our drive to sort of boost the aspirations of the students that were attending the sixth form. So one of the sixth form team that is a Trilby TV sort of ambassador, so to speak, sort of transformed their screens both in the reception for the sixth form area, but also their communal areas too. And that was pretty much showcasing, what is possible by coming to Clevedon School, what is possible and where do the students go on to. And I think that's important, not only for, students that will be thinking about their next steps very soon, but also, the little 11-year-old that joins in September, they need to have some kind of ambition and some kind of vision as well.
I think it's brilliant, and there should be one up there for Gavin Smart. That he went on to be a 24 handicapper at golf, obviously. Right?
24? Nah, don't.
I'll move, John. Brand's going to be, well, it's hugely important for all of you, of course it is, but RGS Worcester, you're a well-known independent school, you're a distinguished school for Apple, so having brand on that reception screen as people walk in is going to be extremely important, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And it's the way you can build your brand is multifaceted as well. This was created on something called Adobe Spark Post, and I think we come to that a bit later with how we create content. And this was actually done by me. marketing department have just changed here, and they've seen this, and it won't be up there for much longer. They've got their own ideas about how they're going to be marketing it, which is great to see. But it was, it gave them that spark of realization that actually these screens are powerful. And by the way, Gavin, that idea you just shared I totally agree with Neil. I think it's fantastic, and I think it's got marketing value in itself as well. Not just marketing for potential parents, but marketing for the children, to see what sort of aspirations they can have, and the sort of things that they can achieve. So marketing is certainly important here on a range of different levels, but it's that sort of triangulated marketing approach to pupils, parents, potential parents, and staff as well. And that sense of community certainly is something that is marketable and can be shared and created on the Trilby TVs.
Yeah, and I'm also playing your Twitter feeds at the moment, which obviously Twitter for us is a wonderful mechanism for signage because, well, we animate it, we play the video, we show multiple images, but actually when you think about Twitter, it's a little bit of text, and it's some rich content, as we can see by your Twitter feed that's playing at the moment. And Twitter's a big driver for you guys, not just in reception, but all around the school, isn't it?
Huge. It's we've like most schools now, we have way more than one Twitter account. We've got 4 schools, each one with their own main account. Then there's the separate sports accounts, and we have some teachers use those accounts. Some of the marketing team use them as well. So again, we have to be careful with content, making sure that it's done properly, because if it is on the screens, it will be shared. The same with the photos as well. But generally, I think that the Twitter connection with Trilby is one of the best features, because it can be updated instantly from anywhere, and it's a very surefire way of making sure the content's up to date as well, without having to log in and log out and that sort of stuff. And it does also raise the profile of Twitter and our use of that, because you're mindful that it's not just content that's being shared online, but also being shared around the schools.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great thing about Twitter. Once you add it to a signage platform like us, you don't touch us then. You set the criteria, how many tweets you want to see, do you want the video to play, etc., etc. You can also set it to delete. So, for example, if it was Science Week and you wanted NASA's Twitter feed up there for a week, you could auto delete it on the Friday. So it's a really good mechanism for keeping screens up to date. So it's brilliant. Thank you. But when I speak to people, for me, it's always about, its real impact is what the reception screen's all about. So for me, it's about certifications, it's about your partnerships. I love when I see parent quotes on the screen or a head teacher's welcome. Images of the learning, I think, is always great, because you're trying to show what a great school you are and all the good stuff that happens. Twitter feeds and things like your school values. So, again, from Shirelands, they have their values that will be playing on all of the reception screens in all of their academies. And I think that's very important. If you're a set of schools, when I walk into the reception screen of each of those schools, it should really mirror each other, apart from a little bit of difference on Twitter feeds and maybe, images of the learning. But I should get the same look and feel into every school that I walk in, because, you're a set of schools. So having those value slides on the front reception screen is a great idea. Chris, I kind of bypassed you because I know you don't have a screen in reception at Portsmouth College. So let's talk about the staff room screen. And I know you've been using that to drive a real strong community at Portsmouth College, especially during this difficult time of COVID.
Yeah, and I think this really does sum up the power of the screens here. So the image that's We Are Amazing Teachers here. So this was before that first lockdown. So as a group of staff, we did extensive training, anticipating a lockdown, anticipating schools closing. But naturally, there was a lot of reservation about this. Teachers were nervous about this. Students were nervous. And we came up with this idea. Again, just created on Adobe Spark post here. Really simple, beautiful image that I took one morning of our college. So just We Are Amazing Teachers, and that we are Portsmouth College, just creating community. Again, just really simple, popping it up on the slides, and then we just set it, that was the single image across all of the screens on those 2 days running up to lockdown. Really, really powerful message for both our staff, our students, our stakeholders, of that we are in this together and we can accomplish anything with it. This is probably the single biggest success of signage that we've ever had from it, of just creating that community.
Yeah, nice. And that's what it's about, isn't it? We don't always have to push mundane information at people all the time. You know, when I need to get to class, I know when I need to get to class, or when something's happening. Actually, let's build a really positive community and celebrate why we're in this job, you know, inspiring young people and being amazing, because day to day we pretty much are. So I think that was a really nice one to see, Chris. John, I mean, just quickly, I see Apple support Twitter feeds, which kind of runs like a lightweight CPD mechanism, surely, where you run in, you grab a coffee, you grab an idea, and you're back to your classroom. Is that kind of how it works potentially?
Absolutely. That was put on by a good friend and colleague of mine, Matt Warren, who works up at RGS The Grange. He's also an Apple Distinguished Educator, and therefore has interest in the Apple ecosystem and all the Apple tools and techniques that are out there. And he uploads that content into his staff room. And when people come in for a cup of tea, sometimes obviously having those things rotating are useful for the teachers to get a quick glimpse of what sort of things they can be doing with their devices. He also uses the staff room to run CPD, and again uses that signage in there for that as well. But the Twitter feeds, again, there's all sorts of support on there from Apple. Indeed, you know, Trilby's TV. I think in one of the schools, the Trilby TV Twitter feeds up there on rotation as well. So there's all sorts of possibilities for sharing content in that sense as well.
Yeah, nice. And I do love the Fiat thought, you know, moving on to Dan and to Gavin. Gavin, you know, sharing best practice in the staff room, that's got to be a good idea.
Yeah, definitely. I think it comes from the fact that the students can share their work so easily that it then raises questions about, you know, what is possible. So one of the things that we shared when we had our Apple Teacher House competition, we shared who was obviously achieving the Apple Teacher status, but also, you know, things that you wouldn't necessarily realize that you can do with for instance, iOS or iPad in particular. Things like accessibility. So, you know, what is possible to support the students that they are teaching, that, you know, that will be a very, 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 very easy thing for the teacher to be able to just suggest to the students, that then the students are, you know, simply just doing it themselves later on when they've been made aware of, you know, for example, the reader view on Safari.
Yeah, I mean, again, reinforcing. I mean, you know, a lot of schools were on those big journeys of one-to-one iPad or one-to-one devices or buying into tech. And surely the staff room is a great place to be reinforcing the journeys that you're on, but also sharing, you know, all of that information you're trying to get into them every day. I mean,
yeah, definitely.
I mean, like you said, you've also got this was your Apple House competition video.
Yeah, so the Apple Teacher House competition, as I said previously, our house competition is very strong within Clevedon. So, you know, I like to say putting pressure on teachers to be able to become an Apple teacher, or to develop in terms of their CPD. It's really important, and having students to be able to see this as well. So it wasn't only on our staff screen as well, it was on the corridor screens, that they would see that their tutor, let's say for instance, hadn't got Apple Teacher status, and they were not getting points for their house. A little bit of pressure from their tutees to say, well, come on, sir, you haven't done your Apple Teacher qualification yet, you need to get us some house points. It worked quite well.
Yeah, nice. And Dan, as well, for you, sharing best practice, I took from what you'd given me, you know, or sharing classroom displays and curriculum celebrations. And I also like tweets from other schools in the trust to enhance collaboration. And I wonder if you're sharing from the other schools, does that promote a bit of competition, do you think?
Oh yeah, definitely. You know, and to consolidate what Gav said there, I mean, if you go back to just the work side of it for a second, if I'm a year 4 teacher sat in a staff room and suddenly some year 3 writing comes on the screen and it's amazing, it ups my game. And equally, if I'm telling my staff that we should be doing something, but I've got photos of it in practice, or movies of it in practice around the school, I can put it on the screen there as well. And yeah, we've got 22 schools in our trust now, all the way from, with most northern Wiltshire all the way down to Devon. So communication through the trust is really important. And yeah, I like to think that there are good things happening in all the schools that people are celebrating, which, you know, we'll see in our staff room. And then obviously, as you say, it creates that competition because you want to be the best at what you do, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can't believe it's 5 to 11 already. I mean, we do finish at 11, so I've almost feel like I need to apologize to people on the webinar that we're going to have to kind of skip towards the end. But of course, you have Padlet Wall link, which is, if you're seeing my screen, it's the one down here on the bottom left. So I can highlight it here as well. It's padlet.com/Neil Emery, capital N and capital E /TrilbyTV. So if you access that link, you'll access this Padlet Wall and all the content that's on here. I'm sure I'll talk to academia about doing part 2 of this webinar, but it's really great that we get so into this and time just flies by, and it's not an awkward hour, so I'm happy for that reason. Let's get into some outcomes from building whole school communication. Dan, I liked your bit about breaking the bubble of being a traditional school. Just what did you mean by saying that?
Just that. I mean, the area that the school's in, when I first started working there, I kind of got the feeling that you know, the kids obviously came to school, their parents came to the school, the grandparents came to the school, you know, 7 generations came to St. Bart's, and maybe a lot of families just couldn't look outside of Bassett and didn't realise, you know, there was a world outside of there, and their aspirations were maybe just to work in the high street. So it was all about that. It was all about showing them the future work environment that they could be in, and how technology can play a part in that. So kind of everything our curriculum does at the moment is to look outside of Bassett, you know, look on the global scale, and Trilby TV has been a means for us to do that as well.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And Gav, I know the way you advertise your house competitions. I'll put another one up here as well. I mean, the hype that you create at Clevedon and some of the things you do, like you actually have a darts competition where everybody dresses up in fancy dress. I love how you create that strong community. Let me just bring this down a little bit while you're talking. So, you know, do you find that signage really helps to drive, you know, buzz at Clevedon?
Oh yeah, massively. So you know, when we do have the house competition, it ties in with sort of the Premier League darts. It is, you know, your typical darts attire from not only the darts players but also the supporters too. They've got their banners. It's absolutely wild in the hall on that lunchtime. And by having everything branded in exactly the same way, it really does, you know, have that massive buzz. However, if you are teaching after the lunchtime, after the dance competition, it can be quite difficult. But yeah, the house competitions and the buzz around the house competitions and the community element of being within that house and supporting that house, you know, really comes alive when you can be totally immersed within the environment that you are in.
Yeah. And John, I love the image you shared today because it is about patting people on the back and saying well done, right? And again, building a really strong community.
Absolutely. Similarly to the other chaps, we like to celebrate success of teachers as much as of pupils. So that's Mrs. Clay, and she obviously became an Apple teacher, and alongside a number of other teachers, those images are shared all the time, not constantly, but we put them up every now and again when a new teacher becomes an Apple teacher, or even a Adobe certified educator. There's a number of these things. Perhaps we should have a Trilby certified educator scheme soon, Neil. Yeah, no, it's such a positive platform for celebrating success from everybody. But I do now need to speak to the head of house to get a darts tournament sorted out as well, because that looks amazing. What a great idea that is as well.
You should see some of the other ideas. They're crazy, but they're absolutely brilliant. What must be so exciting to go to Clevedon School. It really must be. So, yeah. And Chris, finally, you know, I really liked how you talked about voice and ownership from the students, because actually we don't need to manage and do this stuff. The students can do it as part of their learning, surely.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, you can beat a bit of bully as well, but yeah, the students take charge of these screens, and that's awesome to see. And even within the community itself, we as like panelists here, we learn from each other. So this morning, as we were speaking beforehand, the mindfulness image just above there came up on RGS's feed, and we do a Wednesday wellbeing takeover, and it's quick and easy. That's already up on our Trilby systems while we were sat here talking, and all of our screens across the whole college just switch to wellbeing videos, and then we just update it every week. It's really simple. It might be a focus one week of taking care of yourself or exercise or eating healthy, and it's just so simple to do, and the students absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So, well, listen, can I grab these as well and put them in the chat? So I'm going to come back. I'm going to stop sharing. I'll pop these in the chat like so. This will be recorded as well. So we'll make sure that academia send out a link to everybody to, give them all the links that they need. I don't know where the hour went, gents, to be honest. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I always get nervous about these things because I think it's good to get nervous. And I had plans for so much more, but we got through probably just a third of what I thought we might get through within an hour. So there definitely needs to be a reconvene to do another session, that's for sure. So I wanted to say thank you very much to you guys for coming along and doing this. I could talk forever, but obviously it's so much more powerful if I have people who actually work within schools who use digital signage to build positive communities and build whole school communication. So thank you, Gavin, thank you, John, thank you, Chris, and thank you, Dan, so much for being part of this today. Thank you, Ryan, Academia, for putting this on. It's been a pleasure. And again, I'm sure it's recorded and will be available after this. Thank you for anybody that joined us today. I hope it was useful. Access the split wall, access those resources, and think seriously about putting a plan together. If you want to contact us at TrilbyTV, again, the links are in the chat right now. Apart from that, it's 11:01. I'll hand back to Ryan, and I'll take my hat off now.
That was brilliant. Thank you very much, Neil, and thank you, Chris and John and Gavin and Dan as well. That was fantastic. I will play the video now. We'll be in the background if anyone wants to drop any messages. We can pick up any questions from there. But that was really great. So thank you very much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you.
I'll do the wave. Thank you, guys. Everybody's off.
Thank you, Neil. I'll end the webinar there. That was great. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.